Welcome to the Primal Show. Your host, myself, Heath Squier, and today's guest, I would say the site owner of Paleo Hacks, or not owner, but maybe the moderator, or the guy that runs the show behind the scenes, David Sinick. Glad to have you on the show. I absolutely love your site. You guys have probably one of the best sites on the internet that is great for getting information about paleo. Amazing recipes. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. Want to ask you a little bit about how you got involved in Paleo Hacks.
Cool. I'm glad to be here. Yeah, you want me to jump right into it?
Sure. Yeah, tell us a little bit about how you got involved with Paleo Hacks. I know this site's been around for a while, so tell us a little bit about how you came to the site.
So PaleoHacks, I think, was started either in early 2011. It's in the 2011-2012 range. The reason why I don't know that is because I wasn't around when it was founded. Essentially, in 2011, I got into paleo myself. I had been, really. I felt like I was like really old suddenly. I was like in my, I was like 22 years old, which is telling you how young I am. And like the one thing I remember the most was like every time I'd leave my apartment was always like a disaster because I'd be like out the door and I'd be like, oh no, I forgot my keys, and I'd run back in and I'd be like, shoot, where are my keys? And I'd leave and I'd be like, oh no, my wallet, and it'd be like this back and forth insane thing. And I was like, why is this happening? Like this is something that I see like that I used to see my grandparents do. Like why am I having these sort of issues? And I mean that was just a small sample, but that's like the one thing that I remember the most is like these like weird memory lapses. And my roommate at the time got me into paleo. He's like, hey bro, just eat meat all day, just ground beef. And I'm like, well, that's great. I love ground beef. Like, let's do this. And also at the same time, I had just moved to San Diego with this roommate, and my next door neighbor, so 1 or 2 blocks across the train tracks, was my buddy Sean Croxton, who runs Underground Wellness. And I worked with him a little bit, and he did some tests with me, and I can go into more of that later. But basically changed my life, like made me a whole person. And so I was like super sold on paleo. So this all started in 2011, basically around the end of 2012, I want to say. I was doing internet marketing, basically. So I was working behind the scenes with some people in other industries, mainly in the fitness space with a guy named John Romanello, and essentially PaleoHacks was pretty popular at the time. It was just a Q&A platform, and I was working with some people, and through a couple connections, essentially the guy running PaleoHacks was like, hey, like, this site is getting a ton of traffic. I've got other projects. I want to turn this into a real business. And I was like, well, I love paleo and I love internet business, so I'm your guy. And after negotiations and stuff and whatnot, I came on board to essentially kind of run the show. And at first it was part-time, but by the end of 2013, I went full-time into PaleoHacks and made that my sole thing. So that's essentially, I started with me getting into paleo. Then the honest truth is, like, through a couple connections and some luck, it fell into my lap, really, and it was like a dream come true. I was like, I couldn't believe that this was like a real opportunity for me in my life. I was very happy about it.
That's awesome. I mean, there's nothing better than hearing somebody that practices what they preach, because there's so many people that I've met and they're like, they run these paleo sites, and then you go out to dinner with them and it's like, are you serious? Like, what are you eating right now? And, given that everybody, cheats every now and then, but I mean, I think, people really should kind of practice what they preach, and you actually are living proof of that. Is, you follow paleo, you've seen the benefit firsthand. Have you noticed a lot of like hypocrisy in different paleo people regarding like what they're preaching and then possibly what they're doing in their own lives?
Um, I don't know. I know a lot of it's a very common thing. Okay, this is not a exclusive to paleo thing where like it's often that like you see the people that are projecting the most onto others about like doing a certain thing or being a certain way are that thing that they're projecting. Like yeah, like people who like are trying to tell you to be healthy often are like the least healthy people, or like it's always like that kind of opposite effect, and it's like a compensation mechanism. I think that happens a lot. I mean, I feel like I haven't seen that many egregious examples of it, and it doesn't bother me. I mean, like, we're all humans. Nobody's perfect. But I do think, like, if you're if you're like really sick and you're really not eating great food and you're not taking care of yourself and you're considering yourself like a thought leader in a space that's all about eating great food, I mean, that's not, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. But it's not something that I spend a lot of time thinking about, because it's just like, I'm just doing me, you know what I mean? Like, if someone wants to do, as long as they're not like hurting people, you know what I mean? It's not, I'm not that upset about it.
Tell us a little bit about how your site's evolved over time. I mean, obviously you started off with the Q&A, and now it's got such a great like mainstream look, you know, where it's really visually oriented. That's definitely not how it was. I mean, it was definitely just a question and answer type of board when it began. I
Yeah.
actually remember that because I launched Paleo Bread back in 2011 when everybody mind was blown bread on paleo, and it was during this whole time when people didn't understand transitional foods, you know, like paleo bread and I think, you know, I'm sure paleo bread was all over Paleo Hacks. I remember it being on there. Can you kind of tell us, though, how that discussion forum has turned into what it is today, where it's like a really recipe kind of driven site, more visually oriented? Was that you behind the scenes kind of pushing that, or?
Yeah, so basically, like, anything that's happened since the initial Q&A platform was I I guess I can take credit for. I essentially, like, my big thing when I came on was like the site had been getting a lot of visitors, because it's user generated content. So obviously users go on and ask a question and then other users answer it. And because so much content was being created on a regular basis, Google was really stoked about that. And so Google essentially, like, when you search for random, like really random stuff, like jaw pain and Bragg's apple cider vinegar and stuff like that, will show up for that because someone will have asked a question about it. And my first thought when I came on was like, okay, if that's how we're getting our traffic, like, if one day Google changes their algorithm, which happens very frequently, as a lot of people know, essentially we could suddenly have no traffic and no business. So my thought was, like, I wanted to mitigate that risk of potentially a Google algorithm update, like just shutting our business down overnight. And I knew that Google is all about extremely high quality content. Like, that's their thing. Like, all they care about essentially is users using their platform, finding what they want, and then because they found what they want, they use it again, they click on ads, and they make Google money. So we created the blog in 2013, and I've learned a lot since then. Our initial content was not very good. Like some of our recipes didn't even have pictures, like stuff like that, which back then I thought was like, oh my god, like, how do you even do that? Like, where do you find people? And now it's like not that hard. Yeah, so we started to build out. We started with recipes and then fitness articles, and we built up our stable of writers. We have about 12 writers now, to where we're trying to pump out as high quality content as possible, and we're still getting better. I mean, like, there's a lot of other sites out there that I would honestly say have better content than us, but we're working our butt off to make sure. The recipes, I'd say we're very competitive. Our recipes, I think, are pretty rock solid.
Yeah. Now, whose idea was it for the podcast? Because that's kind of new, and I actually listened to a couple of them. They're well done.
Yeah, so that coming into the space, I knew that a lot of, like, a big way that people were consuming information in the health space is through podcasts. I guess everyone's listening to them while they work out or drive or whatever. And I also had known about the popularity of podcast through Sean Croxton, who, like, throughout this whole process, I was consulting him all the time because he was like a big player in the space, and I had actually done some work with him previously, so we were really good friends at this point. And he introduced me to Clark, who's our host. He was like, "Hey, I know this guy Clark. He's really good. I bet you could work with him on this podcast." And he connected me, and it took a little bit of basically like one final like begging email to Clark, like, "Come do our show, please." And he did, and he's done like an amazing job. He's such a pro. He really, like, tries really hard. He does more than try hard. He, like, prepares really well. He's got like these detailed show notes, and that's been an evolving thing as well. But yeah, it's just like one of those things where we knew it was popular. We had a great person to do it, and it kind of just fell into place. So we knew that we could, leverage it.
What are some of the kind of trending paleo topics you've seen that you're kind of honing in paleo hacks around? Like, there's a lot of I would say trends like vegan is a new one where you're blending paleo and vegan together. There's keto, paleo. There's a low carb, kind of like modifying the basic paleo template to incorporate a certain style of eating or a certain way of eating to get better results. Are you guys seeing any sort of trends, and what are your thoughts on those trends?
Um, Honestly, like the biggest trend I see is like kind of, and again, like it's all from my perspective of like I'm not super in like I'm in the paleo space, right? Because I run a business in the paleo space, but I'm not like keeping up to date on every single new blog post about it and whatnot. So if like someone creates a new thing, but my biggest thing I've noticed, and I think this is an important trend and one that I'm trying to, I mean, I guess we're trying to push as well, is that looking at paleo as more of a template, and not as like this is the definitive diet, like this is the only way to eat for every single person on the whole planet. Like there's no, but like as like here's the core principles of it. You
Right.
know, if you have this condition, make these tweaks. If you have this condition, make these tweaks. If you have this problem, make these tweaks. If these are your goals, make these tweaks. Like that's the big thing I've seen. I know Kresser kind of talks about that with his stuff, like the paleo template. Um, Definitely a lot. It seems like dairy is becoming less of a. People are becoming more lax about it, especially like I feel like a lot of that is like. I mean, obviously, like Sisson and Kresser are okay with dairy, but I feel like bulletproof coffee more than anything is like pushing the dairy boundaries. Yeah, I mean, mostly just looking at it as a template more than anything has been like the big trend, and that's something that I'm really happy about. Like one thing I'm not into is like dogmatism and like or dogmatic whatever. There's no need for that. You know what I mean? Like I think that if we can all like use this kind of baseline for ourselves and then work from there, you'll end up being much healthier than when you started.
Yeah, I mean, one issue I have is with paleo and people trying to alter it. I don't mind adding dairy, but cool, call it primal. Don't call it paleo because it's
Hmm.
not. One issue I've had with specifically with Chris Crusher, and this was like blew up all over the internet, was he went on Dr. Oz and tried to add in beans into the paleo diet,
Hmm.
and everybody was like, "What are you doing?" And it's not so much, beans are beans, but they're not part of the paleo diet. And I
Right.
understand the template point of view, and I actually really believe in it because I think that's one thing that's awesome about paleo is you can modify it in all these, different ways in order to achieve optimal health. But what I don't want to see happen is, vegans are trying to make paleo like they're trying to alter it in a way that it's now all of a sudden vegan. Call it something else. I actually like this new term vegan. It actually opens up a whole new. I know it sounds like absolutely ridiculous,
Hmm.
but it's nice because it really incorporates so much more. It's kind of we talked about this with Dr. Mark Smith on the last show about being able to push optimal health for a vegan because we
Hmm.
know a vegan's not going to be able to consume meat or anything from animal. I think it's I don't know. I see so many people trying to alter what the core principles of paleo are, but don't add in things that weren't there to begin with. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Because I think they're there for a reason.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think like one thing that I've noticed to a more extreme degree is like these like hit pieces that come out about paleo. That's like oh, what is it like anthropologist says that our ancient ancestors weren't eating a paleo diet. Here's exactly what they were eating, or there was no way we could really possibly know. And they're like, see, the paleo diet's debunked. Like it's total crap. Like there's no value from this diet at all because of this anthropologist who says that like, oh, they might have been eating these foods instead. Like who cares? Like first off, it's that's that's not even the point. I'm like losing my train of thought, but the point here is like um, they try to hijack it and say like paleo is you have to eat exactly like your ancestors and eat raw meat and all this stuff. Like that is dangerous to me. Is when they try to hijack it to that degree when they make it into this thing that it really isn't. Um, yeah, sorry, I lost my train of thought there, but
No, I agree. And there was this one I was like, all of a sudden, they found out that Paleolithic man had ate carbs. Now, paleo diet's all wrong.
yeah.
There's potatoes or something in there. It's like, All right, fine, but we all know that potatoes and corn and beans create inflammation. Like beans are tough to digest, corn is inflammatory to the joints,
Mm.
potatoes same thing, inflammatory. It's like why we don't need them, you know. It's better just to stick to what we know works. And I think at the end of the day, whether it's vegan or paleo, it's really about achieving optimal health. I just happen to have found that paleo is the best way, and I think I modify it in my own ways when I want to, look a certain way, or if I want to feel a certain way. I can add more carbs. So I think that's the beauty of paleo, is that, and that's why it's not going anywhere. That's why it's not a fad, is because you can alter it, And I'm so sick of, because we spend, millions of dollars literally on Facebook. And one great thing about spending that much money on Facebook is I get to hear every single comment about paleo, and it's just, there's all these comments like, well, Paleolithic man didn't have a glazed donut paleo protein bar. I'm like, yeah, he didn't have a glazed donut paleo protein bar, but the modern caveman do. It's like
Yeah.
it's so ridiculous how people think about paleo, and it's also been a real eye opener. Advertising across, reaching millions of people and seeing what they think. I'm in a really unique position, and I think also I've also seen paleo be embraced by more than ever recently. The amount of interest, the click-through rates that we see on Facebook has gone up tremendously. The conversion rates are higher than ever before. And what's great is there's so many people like yourself and PaleoHacks and Mark Sisson and all these people educating the population about the benefits of paleo. And, companies like mine get to reap the benefits because we happen to make products that are compliant, and they help people achieve optimal health. I mean, I think paleo's gotten so big. I mean, your Alexa score is like 8,600. I mean, 8,600 of all sites in the United States, which is huge. I think 28,000 in all sites worldwide. That's pretty, significant. I thought I had a pretty good amount of traffic, but at 8,600, that's huge. I'm sure there's sites that have more than you that are paleo, but still, that's quite an accomplishment, and you should be proud of that number.
Thank you. Yeah, every year, 2 years ago when we did an online event called PaleoCon, and I was like, oh man, like we better get this out before January of this year, because like this is the last year that paleo is popular, like for whatever, I don't know why I had that thought where it's like we're running out of time, like, because actually I think what had happened is like I think in the fall, I was looking at Google Trends, like in the fall paleo kind of dips in popularity a little bit, and then January it just skyrockets, and so like there was a dip and I was like, uh-oh, it's not going to come back, and of course it did. But yeah, like look, I think that when people call paleo a fad diet, I think that's a pretty ridiculous and just silly statement, because obviously, as you know very well, it's just eating good, healthy, unprocessed foods is really the core of it, and I don't see how that's a trend or a fad at all. Like, is it becoming more popular now? Yes. Is it trending upwards? But is it like, is suddenly in a few weeks we're gonna be like, oh no, we were wrong. Like you just don't eat vegetables. Like no, those are bad for you. Like suddenly that's gonna go. No, it's not. Like that's like a crazy statement to make. Like really not accurate at all.
Yeah, really, if you think about where can you really go from paleo, because you're already eating as clean as possible, so it's kind of like, where do you go from, vegetables and fruits, nuts, and lean meats, outside of, you could be a vegan, but, you can't get any cleaner. Do you want to be a vegan? I would rather eat lean meat, but that's just a personal decision. So, talk to me a little bit about the popularity of, I think paleo has gotten so popular, like I was saying, and internationally popular. Have you seen a lot of interest coming from outside the United States to Paleo Hacks? I know personally we've started distributing Julian bakery products in Australia, UK, Canada, Netherlands, like pretty much now all over the world. And it's interesting to see these little pockets of paleo people really start to spring up, and it's starting to get extremely popular, especially down in Australia and the UK. Have you noticed the same thing?
Yeah, definitely. So my experience, and my also inference, semi kind of mildly educated guess is like the UK, for example. I feel like has kind of been uh, about this. Like it seems like the United Kingdom and Europe is way more on board with like healthy food and like getting rid of chemicals in our food system and all that kind of stuff. Like they seem to be way ahead of us on that. Definitely a lot of our audience is from that area. Australia is hugely popular. In fact, one of our original recipe writers and one of the people we worked with on our initial cookbook is from Australia. And we get a lot of, we just have a lot of people from there. But it seems like, I mean, these are like the bigger countries, but like, or not countries, but areas. But Europe, Canada, Australia are all big. I think really big. I think I would venture to guess, and again, semi-educated opinion, that like the average person cares a little bit more about their health in Europe and Australia. It seems like, America's like not doing so hot on that front.
Well, as a food manufacturer, we actually go out of our way to sometimes import products from ingredients from Europe because they don't have any GMOs in them. So actually, the same ingredients made here in the U.S. has a GMO where we have to go outside, pull it all the way in from like the Netherlands, right? Yeah. Bring it in here to the U.S. just so that it's GMO free. We go to that much effort, but it's worth it, And it's just so sad that we've ruined so many great ingredients with GMOs. It's very sad. Yeah, I think one of the things that we had Pete Evans on the show a couple of episodes back, and I think it's great to see people like him really pioneering and setting and just developing so much awareness in Australia. And I'm excited to see somebody really step up in the UK and Europe and also in Canada that can kind of be the pioneer in those areas. I don't know necessarily. I've seen too many people in Canada and the UK, but it would be nice to see more because people like Pete Evans develop so much awareness. Just like here in the US, we have Mark Sisson and we have Dr. Cordain and so many others. But hopefully we'll see a lot more.
Yeah.
Did you see Pete Evans go? He put one of the guys on like one of the news stations on the paleo diet, and he lost a bunch of weight. I guess kind of just completely, shocked everybody over there in Australia. I guess it's a big deal right now, but it's interesting to see just how popular paleo is getting down there. I mean, the demand is nuts. We're sending more product down there than ever. It's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I can just tell you from our traffic stats, honestly, is that like, yeah, absolutely, Australia is huge. It just seems like I just get a healthier vibe from that part of the country. I mean, part of the world. But yeah, no, I mean, Australia is they're definitely killing it for paleo stuff.
Here in the U.S., what are you probably look at all the analytics, traffic coming to your site. What are some of the I guess hot spots in the U.S.? I mean, if you were to identify the certain states.
I mean, I can just tell you that
cities.
Yeah, I mean, it ends up with analytics. It's always skewed towards the bigger cities. So it's like New York City, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Austin, Dallas. Well, Dallas kind of, but I feel like Austin is more into it than Dallas is. But like the bigger cities, there's none that really stick out as like, oh, that's like a surprising paleo spot. I mean, I can tell you though that like California is like, I feel like and Colorado a little bit too, but I feel like if we're going to pick like the state that's like the most into paleo, I'd say California is for sure. I mean, just from my experience, like living and eating here too, is like just down the street from me, and I'm sure there's one near you too, is like a burger lounge opened up, and they call themselves a paleo burger, and their whole thing is eating real food. And right upstairs from them, and this was a very smart idea on both their parts, is Tender Greens, which is another kind of like quote unquote paleo salad place. And so like that's a thing. Like I grew up in Connecticut, and we didn't have that. Like our fast food was, Wendy's or whatever. This is like I can go down the street and get like a admittedly pricier than McDonald's, significantly pricier than McDonald's, but actual like real grass-fed burger from a fast food place down here, and that's amazing. That's like I think probably one of my biggest motivations behind working in this paleo world is like pushing this forward so that like it's not hard to go and find these kind of foods. Like there are certain places where when I travel, it's like a huge hassle, like it's definitely not as bad anymore. But I remember when I first was doing this, going to like Grand Rapids, Michigan, and being like, well, I guess like I guess this isn't happening. I guess like I'm gonna eat like the most processed uh, paleo. I don't know. It was just so hard, and I definitely we live in a bubble here in California where it's like we can go down the street and there's a Whole Foods or whatever, but like there's a lot of places where this isn't available. So it's cool to like help push this movement and make it become like the norm where you can like. It's crazy to me that I can go somewhere and it's so hard for me to find real food. Like it's crazy. Like it's 2015. Why is it harder than ever for me to like find like an organic piece of fruit or something? That's just crazy.
Yeah, I know. And I'm down here in San Diego. It's great. I mean, we have a lot of burger lounges down here, and there's so many great places. Now opening up. Jimbo's is another awesome place in Whole Foods. So it's definitely getting a lot easier to eat this way. Mm-hmm. So I have to ask. So I've noticed, obviously a lot of site transition with you. I mean, your site got significantly better, and I would say to the point where it almost seems like you got a lot more money infused into paleo. And obviously, I think that probably came because, with a Alexa score of 8,600 and getting that much traffic, you really put yourself on the map in terms of possibly being, purchased or anything like that. Can you tell us a little bit about the background and maybe how Paleo Hacks evolved and maybe the background behind that?
Yeah, essentially, like the long and short of it is Paleo Hacks was previously owned by a guy named Patrick, and he essentially we in the end of 2014 he was working on other projects. So he's like big in the startup world. Essentially, he wrote a book called The Lean Entrepreneur. And that's like his passion. Like he loves that. And so it was becoming a point where it was hard for him to focus on both those things simultaneously. And I mean, like, granted, I'm running the business, so it's not a lot, but it's still like, I'm sure you've experienced this too, is like, even if you have a project that your hands are not in, like it's taking up mental space, right? Sure. So for him, I'm sure, especially me, he's got like a kid running his business. He's probably like having a heart attack every morning. Like what is this guy doing? So anyway, he essentially, said we were looking to sell the business, and I still wanted to be a part of it, obviously, because this is my passion. And so I went out and found a buyer. It was a guy named Mike Geary, and in May of last year, Mike essentially took over the company, and so that was huge for us because Mike is, if anybody is unfamiliar with him, has been a very successful internet marketer for many years now. His main website is Truth About Abs, and has been a very successful information publisher. So with his success, obviously we definitely got a little bit more cash coming in, which was great. Not going to ever complain about that, and that allowed us to reinvest a lot in the business, which has been great. I mean. Nothing has really changed aside from in terms of the sense of like.
Well, I think it's gotten better.
Well, yeah. Well, what I mean is like the direction that we were heading in previously, we're just heading there faster now.
Sure.
We didn't decide to like change what we were doing. So it's been like the greatest thing. Working with him has been a dream, and working with Patrick was great too. I think Patrick is happy with how everything turned out. So now essentially Mike runs it. I run it. Mike owns it. I'm a partner in the company, so we're essentially like the big goal now is like obviously we're talking about the transitions. We redid our blog recently. We're heading way more in like the heavier content marketing direction, which is like I don't like that phrase, content marketing, but that is what we're doing. So like more recipes, more high quality stuff. Like we want to start really stepping up our game on that front.
Now you guys have a book, right? Did I see that, like a Paleo Hacks for Beginners, right? Or
we have a free Paleo for Beginners guide for people who just register for a newsletter, and then we sell cookbooks. So we've got a breakfast cookbook which has been doing insanely well. I didn't honestly realize how many people were interested in breakfast recipes, but it was super. Like it's selling. Like the craziest thing to me is that it's more people are interested in the breakfast cookbook than they are in our main cookbook, which also has breakfast recipes. But I guess there's something to be like that specific niche sort of thing. We have that. We have those two cookbooks. We did our 2 events. We've done some women's stuff. We just launched a sleep program. which is essentially binaural beats and essentially a paleo diet guide that goes with it. So like how you can sleep better by eating better foods.
Nice.
Yeah, and then we have a bunch of other products coming out in the future. We have a cookbook coming out with Pete from Pete's Paleo and some other things too. So it's exciting stuff.
Oh, that's very cool. Where do you see Paleo Hacks going in terms of, I mean, you're expanding in the podcast forum. I mean, is there any up and coming, like, projects that you can kind of talk a little bit about? You said more in the recipe, but anything bigger?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I'm very interested in is, well, like I said, obviously the content marketing thing, and we're coming out with more programs. That's always kind of at the core of what we're doing. But one of the things that I'm really intrigued by and interested in is working with bigger brands and kind of like, I don't know, I don't want to say bringing them into the fold as if they're not already in the fold, but like working with the Whole Foods of the world and doing kind of like that sort of, I guess, sponsored content, but like. So we do a lot of affiliate marketing, right? We promote a lot of information products like six-pack abs products, whatever, and they sell really well, and that's fine. Like I like that. We know the people that we promote. We know their products are good. But one thing that I would really love to be able to do is promote like other goods that people are interested in buying anyway, but just point in the right direction. So, for example, like coconut oil or whatever. Being able to work out deals with companies that own those products so that we can promote them and still it's a profitable business venture for both sides. And that's something I'm really interested in. I've seen like these bigger sites like Mind Body Green, for example, did like a great sponsorship deal with Gap Athleta. And I know that they got, there was a lot of money exchanging hands in that. And that's something that, I mean, obviously the money is really interesting, but it's like, this is an interesting way of doing business where you're working with these bigger brands that have more money to spend and that you're pointing your audience in the direction of these other products that like you might normally not be able to do it because there's like an opportunity cost, right? Like I can point someone to Amazon to get something and the craziest thing is, first off, we probably won't make that many sales, but
Sure.
and obviously on our end that means we make less money. Whereas if we promote an affiliate product or our own product or something like that, we make a significant amount more. So it's like finding something that we can promote these things with these sponsorship sort of deals, and
I think you're onto a brilliant idea there. I mean, and one would be, we know Whole Foods sells lots of health product, and they sell a lot of paleo products, including our paleo wraps and paleo bread, and paleo cereal, and and you can all find that in Whole Foods. But no, my point is you take something like a paleo product like ours that's in Whole Foods, right? And Whole Foods wants to sell our product, right?
Yeah.
You're teaming up with them to push people that are already interested in paleo into a Whole Foods store to find paleo products. I think that's huge. And in fact, I always thought, recipe books should be written like that too, where you have these great recipes, but people are like, okay, well, what brand? They want to know what brand to buy, right?
Yeah.
What brand
are
you using? And I think people are really interested in that because they want to get that exact outcome of that recipe because they know that tastes a certain way, or however you're describing it, that's how they want it, or that picture, they want to make it just like that. So I think people pay a lot of attention to brands, and I think that's a brilliant idea, and I definitely would recommend you doing that.
Yeah, I mean, it's worked out pretty well. One of the companies that's helped us facilitate that kind of relationship with our audience and brands is Thrive Market, who I don't know if actually your stuff is in Thrive Market, so you definitely know them. They've enabled us to they've brought this internet presence to these sort of products, and we can promote them, and it's great. It feels weird to be like, yeah, we can promote Thrive Market and make money, and I really love that. But it is ultimately I would challenge the listener to understand that we run a business, and there's lots of costs that go into that, and we have to make money. And so when a new profit opportunity where it's something that you want to promote and suddenly it makes you money, that's the greatest thing. That's the greatest thing. You know what I mean? Where I can say I could have promoted Julian Bakery's bread before, and I don't know how well it would have done, but now I have this channel where I can promote it, and suddenly it's a source of profit for my company. That's great, and it's something that my audience wants to buy and was already probably buying anyway.
Well, and that's part of why I have people like you on the show, because one, it's so people understand your background, and when you talk about recommending people, for money and getting paid on it. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's about you have a belief system, like meaning that you're on paleo, you actually care about people's health, and you're recommending people to thrive because they actually sell great products.
Yeah.
So there's more of an understanding of why you're doing what you're doing, and it's not just like you're taking money and then you're recommending. You're doing it for your passion. You have a purpose for it. So I think it's important to understand who's running the sites and also why they're recommending certain products over others. And it's not always about money. I mean, it's about quality. So,
yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons why we have people like yourself on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the thing is, like, the dream is someone creates an incredibly high quality product, but also has great marketing behind it, so we can actually sell units of it. You know what I mean? Like, that is my favorite thing in the world, is when someone enters the scene who is like, I have this great product. It fits your thing. It's not like lower than, it's like the high standards that you would use. Like, it's a product you would use. You know what I mean? So I'm like, oh, great. Like, this is the greatest thing. Like, yeah, I'll promote it a lot.
Well, I'll be coming to you in early part of next year. We're going to be launching paleo cheese.
There you go.
And it's the first ever paleo compliant cheese that is not nut based. So I think people are going to freak out about it. It tastes like cheese. It melts like cheese. And it's kind of, and it doesn't taste like the vegan cheeses on the market today. So very excited about that. So, I mean, partnering with somebody like your site, definitely makes a lot of sense to get the word out about it, because we already know you have the traffic. So
yeah, our goal again is to our goal is to build our audience as big as possible, so we can point them in the right direction. Basically, like that's what it comes down to.
Very cool. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on. I think I had a great time in listening to how the site came to be, and I'll definitely be checking out the podcast. I think you guys are doing a really great job with that, and the recipes also. I'm going to actually pitch you a few recipes after the show using some of our products. So thanks so much for coming on, and make sure everybody hit the subscribe button on the show. You can always email me at heath@theprimalshow.com. Send in your questions, and I'll answer them. Thanks again, David, for coming on.
Thanks for having me.